Hi, Kanav here. I thought we'll talk a little bit about how to make a chatbot from scratch. When you're trying to make a chatbot using LLMs, it can get a little bit complicated. There's the front end, there's the back end, and really what we wanted to do was I wanted to provide a template so anybody can basically make it with very little lines of code and a little bit of adjustment to kind of make this happen. And this thing can actually go ahead and not only work with OpenAI, but also work with actually many of the other models that exist out there. So it's a generic way for you guys to kind of learn how to build this and go from there. So first thing first, let's actually go to this little link which is there. So it's there on this particular. So it's github.com kcahol dash saver, which is mine. You go into chat template. So let's go there. Right. So we have the chat template kind of open. For those of you familiar with GitHub, you know what to do. It's quite simple. Go ahead and copy this link from that particular system. Of course, it'll be really nice if you give me a star. So make sure that you also give us a star in terms of being able to use that. So you've got copy URL. Two ways to now go about it. One would be you go to VS Code and you can go ahead and clone a Git repository. So we would press that. It'll go ahead and read it. It'll ask you which folder do you want. I'm gonna just go ahead and put a new folder in there, which is demo chatbot. Um, and once you're actually done, select that as a repository destination, and it actually goes ahead and clones that repository. Another approach to clone this would be to go to your terminal and just do git. Let's do that. Let's do git clone wherever you want it, and then you put that link and the link that you copied, and you would actually have the system cloned. So for those of you who are not on VS Code, this will still go ahead and work. Now let's go ahead and open up the files. So you can see we've got lots of things that are going on here. The first thing I always do is to create a virtual environment. So let's do that. It's simple. Python 3 or Python, whatever you have, -m venv, and let's name this. So I'm going to create it like chat demo env. You can call it anything you feel like, right? And it'll actually ask you, but I don't like the fact that it doesn't actually make it happen. But once you actually open the terminal again, you'll actually see the fact that this is already activated. However, if it is not activated, so the first thing we got to do is virtual environment, right? And we got to make it. So let's copy that command. The command that I showed you is actually the same command that will work for both Windows and Macs. But for a Mac, the way you generally activate it is you go source and then you name your environment. So it's chat template env/bin/activate, right? For Mac, right? And then for your computer, for your Windows, it's going to be chat template underscore environment, right? And scripts/activate. All right. Now that we've actually done that, we've already got a virtual environment activated, and the way you know that is by doing this, right? So you will actually have that already activated. So which is great. Now I need to install my requirements. So all the requirements are actually given right here, which is great. So the first thing you got to do is you got to go ahead and install that. So the way you do that is by pip install -r requirements.txt. Okay. Once you do that, it'll actually go ahead and have your requirements installed. One way you can check that is actually go and do pip freeze. When you do pip freeze, you'll actually see all the environment elements that are already in there, right? So that's the beauty about this particular system. Now this uses something called fast API to actually make this happen and move on. I'm just going to put the next command in there, which is pip install -r requirements.txt. Okay, cool. All right, so That's on that side. Simple, easy. At this moment, you're almost ready, but there is another step that you have to do. Now let's talk about uh, one step that you have to do, which is to actually go to the OpenAI SDK. OpenAI SDK. Just type OpenAI SDK in Google. You'll actually get the OpenAI platform. I believe that's what it is. Yeah. So if you get to this link, so we'll go ahead and do that. Go here, right? And what you got to do is you got to log in. So I'll log in with my account, which is right here. And once you actually log in with your own account, you can actually go ahead and get your own API keys. Okay, so that's what you really need to do. So if you're going to work with OpenAI, you can actually get your own OpenAI key. So you click here, and yes, you have to pay a little bit of money to make this happen, but you won't be using much of it. So here you can actually go ahead and put whatever you want to call it. Let's just say project demo, chatbot, I'm going to call it, right? And it's the default project, just to be simple. And what you want to do is create a secret key. Now remember, this is important, okay guys? Once you actually get this key, it'll only be showed to you once. You will not actually get to see it again. Okay, so this is very important that you copy it, and then you have to create a .env file. So what is a .env file? So .env file is where you actually store your environment variables, right? These variables actually help for us to go ahead and do this. And if you go through the instruction, it'll actually tell you what you need to call it, which is OpenAI API key. So what you do is OpenAI API key is equal to, and then you just put your key. That's it. That's all you need from OpenAI. Okay, so you got to get your key, and that should essentially allow for us to build this chatbot and get it to work. Okay, so how do we make it work? So right, go ahead, get the API key, store it in .env file, and by in the form like this, right? So I'm gonna just put that in so you guys have a full system. Okay, please don't copy my key. I will be deleting this at the end of this project, right? And put your key here. Okay, at this point guys, we are actually ready to test this lovely little chatbot out. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. Before that, I think I have something running here. No, that's good, I was testing it out. All right, so the chatbot's actually running now guys, which is kind of fun. How do we get it to run? So the command that you have to do is, steps. I'll just say steps. Let's do another one, which is steps. And so the next command is this one, uvicorn. Okay, and it's gonna, I don't know why it does that, uvicorn main -app --reload. Now let me tell you what this command actually does. Uvicorn is actually a server that actually helps you run that. Now when you type the word main, it is actually taking the main.py, right, which is right here, and actually mapping it to the app that is going to be loaded. And it reload literally means go ahead and press it and do it again. If you go ahead and do this, lo and behold, you'll actually get something like this, which is that it's actually working and is actually able to go ahead and do that. Now that's already working. You see that link that comes up? That's where you have your chatbot working. So if you press this, you press this, that's it. That's the chatbot. You've got the chat template in there, the alpha release. It even has a way of saying who you are logged in, and I'll talk about that. There's a little icon in here, and you can go ahead and actually get the response right there. And it's nicely formulated. Let's say it is Friday afternoon, so I'm in the mood for a Negroni, and it should be able to give you the answer within that. And that's the beauty about sorry, the response started coming in, that it's actually going ahead and doing that and moving on. You can ask a complex question also, like what is k-means algorithm, and it should be able to give you the answer. And that's kind of fun, right? And you can see it's actually giving you the answer. Now every time you're calling, you are incurring a small cost, but nothing that you guys will actually have running. And this is system that you can actually show. Let's now go over the code. Okay. So before that, let me just see, right? Then go to 127.0.0. Well, let's just copy paste. I think there was a copy paste in here, right? And play with it, right? And let's take a screenshot of this so you guys can have a little bit of fun. Okay. Yeah, this is good. Okay. Right. And so that's it. Now the fun part about what is actually the code doing. Okay. So you can actually see, by the way, the response is coming in and moving on. So I want to just explain to you how the code works and what's actually happening here. So when you actually press the submit button, okay, you're hitting this particular endpoint, which is called stream. So stream takes three things. It takes, hey, what is actually the search query? Awesome. It also will take what is the top documents. Now this is something that we'll discuss later on in the class, but this is relating to RAGs. And also there is a session ID that's generated, and that session ID is something that we actually go ahead and move from, right? If you look back in the command, it should be giving you, lots and lots of data which is there, but it should give you first like this little print statement which tells you what the search with is, just a debugging thing. I also go ahead and print out the session ID, which is just here. You can see the session ID. Nothing for you to worry about there, but this is where the fun begins, right? It actually will go ahead and start this particular thing called the query OpenAI, right? And from that, it'll actually go ahead and it'll go ahead and call the query OpenAI with the search query, and then it gets a streaming response, which is what this content is. So once it actually gets a streaming response, there is something called the server side event, which is what SSE stands for. So first thing is we get the response, which is, as you can see, the response is coming in like this, something like this, right? Every chunk is coming in like that. What it does do is it'll actually take that, convert that to JSON. Once it actually converts it to JSON, it'll actually go ahead and then find the SSE content, right? Which is what it's doing, and then just yield that to the front end. And we'll talk about how this works. And then you just have to do this, which is the streaming response. Okay. So again, very simple way for us to actually make it happen. What's actually happening inside our lovely little query OpenAI? Because that's where we are actually talking to the system, right? So let's go there. So once you go there, you see that this is a class. The init itself is a load.env. This is what .env is, right? In order to load it, you have a function called from.env, load.env. So you can see I've detailed out quite a lot on what each of the line does, right? And then you have this function called query OpenAI. Okay. Now load.env needs to have the OpenAI key, right? And it needs to be stored in this very way. Okay. So once you actually have that, right, it'll actually go ahead and do that. So is the env.env variable. Okay. So we have that. Now you've got the query.openai. You say, now this is how you declare in OpenAI with the library, right? You say completion is equal to self.client.chat.completion. So this is where you declare the client, right? And this is where you say .chat.completions.create, right? And you supply the model. You can supply other models that are also available. There's GPT-3. I think there is a O1 also, so you can go ahead and do that. But this is how you actually submit, your messages. So you can say you are a helpful assistant called whatever, right? Let's call it Durry, right? Because this is meant for some folks with Durham College also. All right. So you're a helpful assistant called Durry, and then it says your role as a user. You just simply go ahead and give the query that the person is giving, and it actually gives you the answer. Now you can have another thing, which is you can have a role as a system, and then that's going to be a different thing. But really, we just want to make it simple right now. This is how you give your command. So if you actually say this is my, you can see role system, which is there, and then role for a user is this, and you can divide this further. For example, if you wanted to get the system to just throw out C++ code, so you would then change this and say, hey, you're a C++ code generator, and for the given query, generate the C++ code, right? Or you're a recipe generator, or you're a give me the answer in SQL. All of that stuff goes into the system content. Okay. And again, I'm just trying to give you a simple way to just sort of see. Then you, of course, press stream is equal to true. And all you're doing is as those chunks are coming in, you are yielding as they're coming in to your main.py, which receives them here, right? Converts them into SSE and sends them to the front end. That's what's actually happening. Now, makes sense? Let's do another little thing. How does ChatGPT provide answers? Right? So you look at it, and then it'll likely go ahead and give you a nice little, and you can see, by the way, it's nicely formatted, all the plus and stuff. And I can even go ahead and say, can you give me references? You should be able to get all the answers that are, references for web links on how GPT works, right? So you can see it's actually going to go ahead and, several foundational resources. It should be able to sort of do that whole thing and provide us with the answer. Now you will see that it is a little slower than usual GPT, and that's because it's running locally on my machine. You can buy a very heavy duty machine and you can actually have all of those things done, but we don't want to do that, right? We want to actually go ahead and just sort of have that. So you can see it's doing that. So let's take a look a little bit at the front end, and let's look at what exactly do you need to change. Now the way you can see it's coming in, which is nice. So the way the front end works, guys, it's quite simple. Okay, all the files are actually in these two folders for the front end. What are those two folders? Templates and static. Okay, so let's take a look at templates. So if you go to index.html, that's what's actually rendered here. Okay, so this is your index, and you can see the links also came in, which is lovely. And you can sort of process them and click on them and go to those links. So everything is like originally put and within that particular system. But let's go back to our system. So you guys probably don't know that much of HTML, and that's okay, even if you do or if you don't, but we can actually make it forward. So here, this is where you change the title. Okay, so you can actually change the title to whatever you want. It reads from a style.css. We'll go back to that, but I want to just finish. And this is an important one, guys. So if you actually look at it, right, if you look as the response is coming in, it's being properly formatted with all the links and everything being put in, right? That is what is called as markdown, right? So all the data that's coming in from markdown, that's the script that actually processes it. Now you don't need to download that script. It's available there, and that's where everything does. Now this is the title container. So again, this is where you want to change the name, chat template, and alpha release. That is there. Logo. Your logo is actually inside your static. So here, if you change this logo and put another PNG, it'll work. Plain and simple, right? If you want to put, a picture of XYZ here, it's going to be okay on that side. So that's the simple part. So those are the things you really want to change, right? You want to change your title, you want to change your elements here, and maybe you want to change the logo. Everything else can kind of remain same. Now, what you'll also see is this file called, now inside the static file, you'll see the logo, you'll see something called style.css, and that's what you actually end up needing to change. Okay, here you can change your color. You can see I've got colors that I can change, right? And if you play around with ChatGPT enough, they'll actually tell you how to change these particular things. So header color, you can see that the color for header that I have is this, and I can make it anything I want. Same with welcome header, logo, and stuff like that. So logo also, you see I've given a max height. You can increase that max height and it'll just go ahead and resize it, right? Header is there, header 2, title container, chat container is what's actually giving you the responses. So that's actually your chat container, right? And you can change that particular thing. And the chat box is also there, right? Input is right there, input container size. And so these are very simple messages that will actually help you change. So you can change a bit of these and actually play around with things. Now we do have the capabilities of also sending out citations, but we don't need to. We'll just go ahead and kind of move from that. Chat.js. Now this is where all the magic is happening on the front end, okay? And I don't want to like get into too much of this, but I do want to explain a little bit. So the first thing that happens is it actually generates the session ID, right? Then if you look at it, it's got three things. It's got the session ID, input container, and chat box. Now when you press the button submit, this is what actually happens. When you press the button submit, it'll actually go ahead and get the search query from the document. You can see it's getting it from the search query. Then it'll also have something called top end documents that is available. Now you could train this in such a way that you've actually not train, but you could design it in such a way that you have the top end documents and everything read from a file and being fed to it. It's quite simple. And this is how it'll actually go ahead and just process that information. It opens the SSE. Remember the SSE that we were sending. So, when you send data like this, JS already has ways to interpret that and put it together. And that's what this is. So it opens the SSE connections, it puts it all together, and then when the message is received, it'll just render the markdown, and that's what's going on, guys. Okay, that's pretty much it. Now there is citation reference also, nothing you have to be worried about, but you can actually send a different kind of message from front end, which is actually going to from the back end, which is going to be dealing with citations. But as I showed you, if you actually ask GPT well enough, the citations are automatically generated and you've got yourself a pretty cool system. So that's it. That's what makes this work, guys. And again, really simple. Once you're done and you're kind of done with it, you don't want to actually go ahead and do it, we can just simply go ahead and stop it. You want to restart it, no problem, it'll restart, right? And that's your basic chat template, right? And we can go ahead and right and so if you look at that, right, so you can see it actually comes back with the answer and within that. Okay, cool. All right, that's what we are talking about on the front end side. Now I want to show you another tool and technology, which is this idea of now running this, but running this with our running this with another approach, which is the Ollama approach. Okay, before we get into the Ollama approach, you need to know what is Ollama. So here's what you do. You go to www.ollama.com. Okay, right, so that's it. Next one, local LLM approach. Go to www.ollama.com. Okay, once you actually go to ollama.com, what are you doing? It's quite simple, guys. Download the crap out of it, right? So when you download it, it's available for all these systems. When you download it and you install it, you'll get this little icon that will come up on top of you. Okay, see that little icon? You'll see that icon in your window, which is what Ollama is, right? Now the beauty about Ollama is it has variety of models. You can see lots and lots of models that you can actually run with your system. Okay, now once Ollama is installed, the first thing you want to do is you go to your command or your terminal, right, and clear, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and now show you with a particular model called Granite, right? So let's take this Granite 3 dense. This is actually an IBM model, okay? And I'm pretty proud of sort of what IBM has done. It's really cool in terms of, the whole thing. It's got 2.63 billion parameters, but it's actually really good for a variety of tasks. Now, the beauty about running something locally is what? Well, one thing is your data is safe. This can work without the need for internet. OpenAI, every time you hit and you're answering a question, there's a certain amount of cost. This has zero cost, right? So this is totally free, and it'll generate answers that are as good as OpenAI, in some cases even better, right? So for you guys, that's the way you want to be able to do that. So let's talk about doing this. So the command to actually go ahead and do anything in Ollama is Ollama, right? And the first thing is you can actually pull, or if you just say run and you give the model name, right? So in this case, it is Granite 3 dense, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just do that. We can actually just go ahead and copy this and make it a simpler thing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So the command is Ollama run Granite 3, and it's going to pull the manifest, right? So it's going to pull, and you can see there's only 1.6 gigs. So that's the other advantage about Granite, which I really like, that it's actually a really cool system, right? And it's going to pull that up, and now we actually have a local LLM that can actually answer a lot of these things. So it's going to go through this. Once it's ready, it'll actually allow me to answer any question, and that's what Olama is good for. Now, again, as I said with Olama, you can say, hi, what's your name? And you can see, right? Hey, what is a recipe for Negroni? And you can see, there you go. It's actually giving me exactly what I would looking for. Or what is k-means algorithm, right? And you can see this is a very nice way. But again, this is sort of a, it's in your terminal, so it's kind of hard to copy paste and hard to sort of see. So now let's actually see what can we do in order to make this work with our chat template. And again, anytime you have the model, right, you can use any model within this. But again, I'm just using Granite 3 so that you can kind of see the whole So part. Now let's actually look at the Granite 3 part. Now the way you actually will do that is you want to go ahead, and you're currently, for example, you might be on the branch main. So the first thing you want to do is just do grid branch A, and that's going to actually show you all the branches. Now I'm actually on the grid branch Granite. So again, if you're on branch main, what you do is git checkout, and you give the name of the branch, which is Granite, and that's where you're actually on. So it'll actually tell you to go on Granite or not. So that's pretty cool. You've got that particular thing. Now in this case, it might actually tell you, hey, if you move between branch and branch, you might have to actually stash your changes, or you might have to commit your changes. So please go ahead and do that. That should be easy for you to look at it. So I'm going to go ahead and now actually have my element in this. So once you actually switch to the branch Granite, you'll see a query Granite also show up here, right? So the query Granite is what actually uses the Olama. Now Olama's great point is that it actually goes ahead and puts everything onto this particular address, which is 0.0.0.0.11434-api.chat. So you're really just making an API request, and Olama will actually answer that. If you put it onto like a server, all you got to do is essentially go ahead and give that particular address and move on. So that's the pretty cool part. So what we're doing here, let's just take a look at the logic. It's really simple, bunch of logging stuff just to make sure that everything is sort of clean. When you init, you actually go ahead and give the model. So we'll go ahead and give the model as Granite 3 dense, which is what you saw in the Olama web page. And you say, okay, self.model is model. And this also stores a little bit of a history of the model. Now, one of the great parts about LLMs is it stores a history of the last, let's say, whatever n number of messages, which actually helps it, come back with better responses when it comes into that. So that's what this is particular about. Let's look at the chat model. So what it is doing is it's just taking the input. So you go ahead and let's say log the user input, and it'll say, okay, what's the user input? That's the user input. That's the payload. And you go ahead and just simply make a request. So the payload is the model, and this is the messages, and you put stream is equal to true. You need that so that your model can actually pick it up. So there's the R request. You raise it for status, and once you actually have the output, you just go through the output and release that. And as the content comes in, you yield it out, which is what the yield does. And by the way, you can also go ahead and keep it for yourself in the system, so it returns it. This is just a function that we have if you want to just check the system out, and this is how you would run something like that. But let's actually go to our front end. In the front end, the only change that I've actually done for the Granite branch is very simple, right? Instead of it actually going to the OpenAI endpoint, which is what OpenAI was, this time it's actually going to go ahead and get that from the so you can see you've got the stream ref goes ahead and gets that. It's actually getting it from the query from the Granite chat, right? So that's what we've done. So the variable is Granite chat, and that's what it's actually going ahead and doing. It's just getting it from the Granite chat. And again, very simple event generator that actually makes it forward. I already explained the front end. So how do you make it run? Quite simple. Now the beauty here is it's quite, so I will go ahead and just do again the uvcon main.app/reload, right? So you've got this particular system, it started, and let's just go ahead and do this. So you can say hi, and this time it's actually running off of your granite, right? And you can even go and say, give me a recipe for Negroni, right? And you can see it comes back with a recipe. Let's have some more fun. Let's say, give me the algorithm for k-means, and also give me the code in Python. You can actually see that comes back with that. Now I'm going to turn my internet off, right? And show you that even if you have the internet off, this system should actually give you the answer. So there you go. It's coming up with the answer on that byte. So that's the beauty about this, right? You're actually offline and it's still giving you the bloody answer, right? And that's where, having these offline models like Granite Dense are of great importance. So you can imagine that when Granite is running, it's not sending everything back to OpenAI, it's not sending everything back to IBM, and that's the beauty about this, right? So we want to be able to essentially use that and be able to give people, the ability to remain completely independent, right? And also, the answers that you get from something like this is much better sometimes in terms of what it is. Now we will talk about rags and all these things, but that's basically it, guys. All you got to do, and you can see the responses coming in just as it is. So what's great is you can actually choose, you can even go ahead and do simple things. You can add a little function here that allows you to do that. Let me just show you a few more things. Maybe one more thing which we can actually do just to sort of show you. So if, for example, here you got the logo.png, let's just go to the web and get the logo for Durham College. Let's just get a logo for anything, right? So let's make a logo, right? And we can sort of see a lot of images come in. So you can take any one of these. Oh, I like this one. This is kind of nice, right? So if you go ahead and save this image as, and you can save it as a PNG, you put it into the folder, you'll be able to get all of those things. So let's say something like this. I'm going to save the image as, just to sort of have fun, I'm going to say some logo, right? And just to sort of change it around, you can use anything that actually goes ahead and does it. I've got Photoshop because I'm not poor. And so I'm going to go ahead and open this up in Photoshop. Let's just do that. Right. And you can say, you can go ahead and do that. And let's just sort of make this to be within that. And I think we can easily do no, I think it's in images. Yeah, okay, good. Crop, right? So I've got that. And if I select the white portion of it, I'm going to say grow, and then I delete it. I'll just delete that particular thing, right? So I can go ahead and actually do that. And if I save this as PNG, right? So I'm going to save it on the desktop just to sort of make it easy. So great, you can remove the background and you save it. So it's now an empty background. All you got to do, guys, is take that particular logo.png and copy it in your folder of the static, right? So now I will just go ahead and paste it here. So I will copy it here. It'll say replace, and you've got yourself a replacement. Now sometimes what happens is when you replace it, you'll be like, okay, let me restart my server. So I restart my server, which UVCon main app, right? And if I do 127, you'll be like, oh, sorry, Kanav, the logo didn't change. What happened? Well, it's because you actually got a cache thing. So you got to go to your Neo Incognito. If you do that, you'll actually see the new logo in there, right? And that's because sometimes the system just works like that, and it should be working. And there you go. That's your basic chat template. Have fun, people. And next time we'll actually learn about how to deploy this on Azure and some of these other things, so you can actually have a website. But again, the basic fundamental is, we'll just look at it. So let's recap. So go to olama.com, download Olama, right? Go to terminal, do Olama pull Granite dense, because that's what we are actually playing with. Again, any model can work. I want to make that very clear. But I seem to like Olama because it makes, I think it's giving me one of the best performances that I've actually seen from some of this. So you see Granite 3 dense. That's the model that we're going to use. So Granite 3 dense, right? So that's our model. Then Olama run Granite 3 dense, right? Play with it and then exit it. I think the way you, let me see how you exit it, right? So I haven't done this for a while. Hi. And then I think if you do Control D, it actually exits it. So I remember by pressing CTRL plus T, change the branch in main code to Granite by doing git checkout Granite run Olama run uvicorn main app -- reload to restart the server with Olama with Granite 3 dense, play, right? Pretty much that's what this is all about, guys. Okay, I hope you have fun. I hope that everybody gets to run it, and that would be our project number 1. I look forward to seeing you guys become expert LLM chatbot generators. Goodbye.